deep and dark. I didn't mean to stay. It was supposed to be a brief stop, a quiet, forgettable detour on my way out of everything. I had left behind a job I couldn't stand, a city that had ground me down to something hollow, and a small stack of memories I couldn't carry anymore. I packed up what I had left and drove west without a destination, telling myself I'd know when to stop. I came across the town late in the evening. It had no welcome sign, no gas station, just a long stretch of road that bent inward toward a sleepy collection of buildings nestled in a low gray valley. Trees bowed over the two-lane highway like they'd been standing guard for generations. I remember thinking it looked still. That's the word I used. Not quiet, not calm, still. Like nothing ever changed there. There weren't many people out, but the lights were on in almost every house. Warm, golden, glowing through dusty windows. Smoke rose from chimneys. A few dogs wandered the sidewalks without leashes. When I drove down what I assumed was the main street, people looked at me the same way deer look at cars. Not scared, just aware. It was getting dark fast. The sky had that flattened kind of gray that presses low on your shoulders, and the trees on the ridge had begun to disappear into it. I pulled into the only place that looked open, a short brick building with a rooms sign dangling above the door on rusted chains. The woman inside didn't ask me for ID, didn't ask how long I'd be staying. She just handed me a key and said, "There's only one way in. You saw it. The road you came on. Keep your lights on if you ever go back out." And then she went into the back room and closed the door behind her. I should have left that night. I didn't. I couldn't tell you why, not really. But when I woke up the next morning, the town had already started sinking into me. That first morning, everything felt off in the smallest ways. The light came through the motel window wrong. The trees were too still, not just unmoving, but unnatural, like props nailed in place. Even the birds sounded rehearsed, like they were imitating what birds are supposed to sound like and not quite getting it right. I walked down the main street hoping to find a diner or a gas station or even just someone I could ask about how to get back to the highway, but the town didn't seem interested in helping. There were people, I could see them. Some stood on porches, some walked their dogs in perfectly straight lines. They'd glance at me, nod politely, then look away. No one spoke first, no one waved. They weren't unfriendly, just distant, like they were all a little out of sync with me. I finally found a small cafe tucked between two brick buildings with a faded awning and a door that rang when it opened. Inside, a man was sitting at the counter reading a newspaper. The place smelled like burnt coffee and something sweet, maybe cinnamon. He didn't look up when I entered. I sat down a few stools away and the woman behind the counter poured me a cup of coffee without asking. She didn't smile, but she didn't seem unfriendly either. She had gray hair tied in a long braid and wore a cardigan that looked hand-knit. "Just passing through?" she asked, finally. I nodded. Most folks say that. At first. The man at the counter turned a page. The sound of it scraped louder than it should have. I didn't ask what she meant. Instead, I asked where the nearest gas station was. She said, "We don't have one. Folks just walk, mostly, or stay put." I must have frowned because she added, "You came from the highway. That's the only way in." I didn't say anything. I just drank the coffee. It was lukewarm and bitter, but I finished the whole cup anyway. Later that afternoon, I decided to leave. I didn't have a good reason to stay, and the motel was starting to smell like mothballs and soap. I packed my things, got in the car, and started back the way I came, the only road in or out. Except, it didn't lead out. I should have hit the curve that wound up toward the ridge in 5 minutes, 10 at most, but the road just kept going. The trees closed in tighter. The light dimmed even though it wasn't sunset yet. I turned on my headlights, just in case. 30 minutes passed. No highway, no signs, just more road winding through the same stretch of forest, the same shapes, the same crooked tree leaning just a little too far over the guardrail. I slowed to a crawl, heart pounding now. I pulled over to check the map on my phone. No signal. I turned around, drove back the way I came. When I passed that same leaning tree again, now from the other direction, I realized what was happening. The road wasn't leading out. It was folding, looping, trapping me inside it. I ended up back at the town limits without ever making a turn. I parked in front of the motel and just sat there staring through the windshield like maybe the glass would crack and let me out. Eventually, I got out of the car and walked into town again. And this time, the people were watching me more closely. There was a little shop I hadn't noticed the day before. It was wedged between two boarded-up buildings and had no name on the door, just a small brass bell and a window filled with clocks, all ticking but not in sync. Some were wrong by a minute, others were hours off. One didn't have hands at all, not even when the hour hit. I don't know why I went in. Curiosity, I guess, or the need to see if time meant anything here. The inside smelled like warm wood and oil. Shelves lined the walls, every one of them stacked with clocks. Pendulums, cuckoos, grandfathers, digital ones with faded LCDs. None of them chimed, not even when the hour hit. There was a man behind the counter. He wore round glasses and a perfectly ironed shirt, buttoned to the neck. "You're new," he said, not as a question. "Just passing through," I replied. He nodded slowly and looked at the clocks. "Everyone's always passing through, until they don't." That phrase again, until they don't. I asked him if he fixed clocks. He said no. They fix themselves eventually. He added, "They run how the town runs, not the other way around." I didn't buy anything, but when I left, I was sure that one of the clocks had stopped ticking, the one without hands. And I swear I heard the bell behind me ring again, even though I hadn't touched it. That evening, I walked past the town's only playground. It was small, just a rusted swing set, a seesaw, and a merry-go-round that looked older than I was. No kids, no laughter, just the creak of the swing moving slowly back and forth in a breeze I couldn't feel. Something about it felt wrong, like it had waiting, and that it would keep waiting until someone returned to it. I stood at the fence for a long time listening, and then, from somewhere behind me, I heard a voice say, "They don't grow up. Not really." I turned. No one was there. Just a cracked sidewalk, an empty bench, and a line of trees that looked darker than they should in the fading light. I told myself it was just the wind. That night, I dreamed of children's laughter, distant, high-pitched, looping over and over like a recording. When I woke up,
I was already sitting up in bed. I went back to the cafe. The woman behind the counter didn't ask me what I wanted this time. She just placed a cup in front of me. "You should try to remember your name," she said quietly. That startled me more than it should have. I opened my mouth to argue, but for half a second, nothing came out. Not because I didn't know it, but because I had hesitated, just long enough to wonder if she was right. I asked her how long she'd been here. She said, "Long enough to forget how I got here, not long enough to stop caring." The man at the counter was gone. No newspaper, no sound, just me and her and the low hum of something electrical I couldn't find. I left without finishing my coffee.
Deep and dark. The library was unlocked but unstaffed. Dust hung in the air like it had been shaken loose recently, but there were no footprints, no chairs pulled out, no signs of anyone else using the space. The books were old but not ancient, the kind of books you'd find in a small town library. Gardening guides, cookbooks from the 70s, mysteries with cracked spines. One shelf was labeled Local History, and I went straight to it. Every book had the same author listed, T.S. Lyle. Most were handwritten, none had dates. One of them was titled The Year the Town Stopped. I opened it. Every page was blank, except the first, in tidy handwriting. If you're reading this, it means you've heard it too. Don't speak to the man with no mouth. I closed the book. The next one was titled The Ones Who Left. That one didn't open at all. It felt heavier than it should have. I started recognizing faces. The man who watered the same patch of grass every morning. The woman with the yellow scarf who walked in perfect loops around the post office. The girl with freckles who sat on the porch of the same house, legs swinging, always humming the same tune. They never changed. Their clothes, their routines, their expressions, identical every day. And none of them looked any older than the first time I saw them. One day I asked the girl what song she was humming. She stopped and looked at me for the first time. "It's what we sing when we forget how the sun feels," she said. Then she kept swinging. I found the post office. It was open, but no one was inside. Just rows of old mailboxes and a counter with a single P on it. Behind the counter, stacks of postcards. I picked one up. It was blank, except for a faint image. A picture of the town from above, the kind of generic aerial photo you'd see on old motel brochures. But something was off. There were no people in the photo. And the shadow of a figure stretched across the street, long, thin, inhuman, as if someone tall had been standing directly over the camera. I flipped through the others, all different shots of the town, all empty, all with the same shadow in the same place. None of them had postage, or writing, or dust, like they were waiting to be sent, but no one ever left. I saw him at the edge of town, standing near a broken street lamp that never turned on. Tall, thin, wore a hat too big for his head. And his face, it wasn't missing features exactly. It just lacked decision. Like the idea of a face had never fully occurred to it. No mouth, no eyes, no nose. just smooth, pale skin that shimmered slightly when I stared too long. He turned, or leaned, toward me. I don't know how. There was no expression, but I felt seen, like he knew I'd read the book, like he was waiting for me to speak. I didn't. I turned and walked away, and every step I took, I heard a second one behind me, until I stepped back into town. Then nothing, just the ticking of the clocks, none of them matching. I started to notice something strange around sundown. The town didn't have a church, not that I could see. No steeples, no stained glass, no weathered white crosses leaning into the wind. But every night, just after the light dipped behind the tree line, a single bell would ring. Not loud, but clear. 3 notes, always 3, low, middle, high. It echoed faintly across the valley like it was bouncing off something much larger than the hills. Every time I heard it, I stopped. Even if I was inside, even if I wasn't trying to listen, my body froze like it had been conditioned to obey something older than thought. The first time I heard it, I was sitting in the motel room, trying to write down everything that had happened so far. I had pages of notes, little observations, names I'd overheard, the layout of the town. The moment the bell rang, I blinked, and the paper was gone. Not thrown away, not misplaced, gone. I opened every drawer, checked the bathroom, tore the bed apart. Nothing. But I could still smell the ink, still feel that slight pressure in my fingers from where the pen had rested. The bell rang again the next night, and again the night after that. Always at sundown, always 3 notes. On the 4th day, I stayed outside to listen. I stood in the middle of the street, right between the cafe and the library, and waited. The wind died, the air grew still, the shadows lengthened like they'd been waiting for their cue. And then the bell. Dull and smooth, like it had been struck underwater. I swear I saw the leaves on the trees bend inward all at once. Every window shuttered, every door creaked shut, even the ones that had been locked all day. The town folded into itself. Not literally, not in a way I could prove. But in that moment, I understood something. Whatever lived here didn't like being watched during the night. So I went back to my room. I locked the door. I pulled the curtains shut. And in the darkness, I heard something move through the hallway outside. Slow, barefoot, dragging something. It stopped at my door and didn't knock. It just waited. There was no mirror in my motel room when I checked in, just a blank spot on the wall where one had clearly hung once, the faded outline of its frame still visible in the wallpaper. But the 6th morning, it was there. Simple, oval, mounted cleanly on the wall like it had never been missing. At first, I thought maybe I'd overlooked it, that I was tired or starting to slip. But I remembered that blank space. I'd checked it a dozen times, trying to fix my hair, trying to see my eyes after another night of dreamless sleep. Now the mirror was back, and I couldn't look away. The reflection was almost right. It moved when I moved, blinked when I blinked, but it was wrong in the mouth, just slightly. My reflection's lips would part when mine didn't. They would curl at the corners like it was listening to something behind me. Once I leaned in close and whispered, "Where am I?" The reflection smiled. I didn't. The rest of the day, I kept catching glimpses of myself in windows, reflections in the cafe's coffee pot, the library's glass cases, all of them just slightly off, blinking too slowly, holding eye contact a beat too long. By nightfall, I covered the motel mirror with a towel, pushed a chair in front of it too, like that would stop something. It didn't. That night, I dreamed I was trapped inside the mirror. My reflection, the one with the smiling mouth, walked free. And as it stepped out into the town, everyone smiled back. People started to change. Not all at once, not dramatically, but enough that I noticed. The woman at the cafe, the one with the braid and the cardigan, suddenly had different eyes. I remembered them being brown, soft, tired, almost kind. But one morning, they were blue. I asked if she'd always had blue eyes. She didn't respond, just poured the coffee. Then there was the freckled girl on the porch. She hummed a different tune that day, slower, lower, almost backwards. When I passed by,
Deep and dark, she stopped humming entirely and whispered, "You're not wearing it yet." I asked, "Wearing what?" She just smiled, like my reflection had. The dogs had stopped barking, all of them, silent now, watching, sitting in the exact same positions every morning as if placed there by someone setting a stage. Even the clocks in the clock shop had changed their rhythm, no longer random but synchronized, each one ticking in perfect unison with the next, like they were waiting for a cue. I walked past the general store and saw the tall man again, the one with no mouth. This time he was standing inside, behind the counter, wearing an apron. A customer stood in front of him, talking as if nothing was wrong, nodding politely, smiling. But the man didn't respond, couldn't. He just stood there, silent, unmoving, still. I ran back to the motel, slammed the door, pulled the curtains tight, sat on the bed breathing hard, trying to remember the sound of my own voice. But it felt further away now, like I was forgetting how to use it. And on the nightstand beside me, where there'd never been anything before, was a small paper tag. One word, handwritten in fine ink. Resident. I tried to record myself. I don't know why, exactly. Maybe it was the reflection's smile or the way people looked at me like I had been here longer than I remembered. I just wanted something, anything, to remind me of who I was before all this. I found an old cassette recorder in the motel's front office, in a box labeled Lost and Found. No tapes, but there was one already inside. Blank, I hoped. I sat on the bed, hit record, and started talking. I said my name, where I was from, what I remembered of getting here. I talked for maybe 10 minutes. I didn't rehearse, just spoke freely, letting the words fall like anchors into a sea I couldn't see the bottom of. Then I rewound the tape, pressed play, and listened. At first, I heard myself, my voice, my rhythm. It was strange hearing it aloud, but it was me, at least for the first few seconds. Then it changed. The voice didn't shift suddenly. It drifted, like a boat caught in a slow current. My pitch lowered, my breath thinned out, and the words started to bend. Instead of, "I don't know how long I've been here," it said, "I have always been here." Instead of, "I'm not from here," it said, "I am the voice of this place." The last thing it said was,
Let the mouth close. Let the eyes shut. The story must stay. Then silence. No hiss, no static. Just pure, dead silence. I didn't record again. I threw the tape into the wastebasket and pushed it under the bed. But that night, as I lay awake, I swear I heard the tape still spinning. There's a building near the edge of town that doesn't open. No windows, no sign, no door handle. Just a tall wooden structure with soot-black walls and a faint humming sound that rises when you pass too close to it. I hadn't noticed it before, not really. But once I did, it was impossible to ignore. Like the town had let me see it, now that I was ready. A man stood outside it one morning, not the faceless one. This was someone else, older, bent slightly, hands behind his back, wearing a red scarf despite the heat. He looked at me, nodded, then walked away. I stood in front of that building for a long time waiting for something, for a door to appear, or for the sound to shift. But nothing happened, until I turned to leave. Then I heard it, the click of a lock turning. I spun around, but the building was the same. I approached the wall, pressed my hand against it. The wood was warm, vibrating, as if 1,000 voices whispered just beneath the surface. Not words, tones, murmurs, the shape of language, but not the sound. And then I saw the outline, a seam in the wall, faint but real, the shape of a door that had been closed so long the wood forgot how to open. Something was on the other side. I don't know how I knew that, but I felt it the way you feel heat behind a wall or pressure in a room that's too quiet. Whatever was inside that place, it wasn't asleep. It was listening, waiting, and I was closer to it now than I ever had been. I wasn't the only one anymore. It happened just after sundown when the bell rang and the wind stilled. I was walking along the edge of town, trying not to think about the tape recorder, or the museum, or the shifting smiles of the townsfolk. I was just trying to move, keep my body awake while my mind frayed at the edges. That's when I saw the headlights. A car. New. Clean. Too clean for this place. It crept down the main road like it wasn't sure it was allowed to be there. The engine idled low, cautious. I stepped into the shadows beside a shuttered pharmacy and watched. It was a woman, maybe in her 30s. She looked tired in a way I recognized instantly. That running from something kind of tired. She pulled into the motel parking lot and got out slowly, stretching like she'd been driving a long time. She didn't notice me. She went inside. I waited until she came back out with a key in her hand. The same key I'd gotten. Room 3. I followed her, not close, just enough to watch from across the street. She stood outside the room for a long time, just staring at the door. Then, finally, she opened it and stepped in. I don't know how long I stood there watching that window. It never lit up. No lamp, no shadow moving inside. The room stayed dark. I went back to my own door, but I couldn't sleep. Because if the town let her in, then what happened to the last person it let go? I waited until morning. I told myself it was curiosity, that I just wanted to make sure she was all right. But I think I already knew something had gone wrong. Room 3's curtains were still drawn when I stepped outside. No movement inside, no footsteps, no coffee cup left by the door like mine had been. I stood there for a long time before I crossed the parking lot. The doorknob was cold. Too cold. I knocked once, nothing. Knocked again. Finally I turned the knob. It opened. The room was identical to mine in layout, but something was off in the air. The smell wasn't mildew or dust, or anything you'd expect. It was metallic, like old coins and wet copper wire. There was a mirror in this room too, but it wasn't the same oval one from mine. This was square, wide, cracked from the bottom up. And in the reflection, I saw her, standing behind me. Her mouth wasn't open, but I heard her voice. "Don't let them give you a name." I turned. Nothing there. But the smell, that sharp, coin-slick smell, grew stronger. I stepped out of the room and closed the door gently. And on the outside, scratched faintly into the wood, I saw something that hadn't been there before. Not a name, just a mark. 3 vertical lines, pressed in like claw marks. I started noticing more names, not spoken, but written, scratched into door frames, carved into the floorboards of the library, etched into cafe mugs, even stamped into the side of a lamppost near the edge of town. None of them were familiar, but they were all first names. Just first names. June, Miles, Hector, Avery, Leon, Nora. I went back to the cafe and turned over the mug I always drank from. Sure enough, there it was. My name, scratched in tiny letters on the base. Not the name I'd told them when I arrived. The name I hadn't used in years, one I'd buried after a long and quiet pain. It shouldn't have been there. I took the mug to the woman behind the counter, held it out. "What is this?" I asked. She looked at it, then at me, then said without smiling, "You're almost settled." I asked her what that meant. She just turned away and refilled the coffee pot. When I got back to the motel, my name was on the door now too. Same script, same pressure, like it had always been there, waiting for me to accept it. That night I dreamed I was carving my own name into a tree trunk, not to mark where I'd been, but to promise I'd never leave. And the tree bled when I did.
Deep and dark. I went walking into the trees. I don't know why. Maybe I thought the town would loosen if I got far enough from the center. Maybe I wanted to find the place where the loop began, the edge that wrapped the town in its strange stillness. The woods were darker than they should have been. Not just from the shade, but from something heavier, something like gravity. Every step felt like I was sinking into the dirt a little more than I should be. There were paths, or what looked like them, winding between twisted trees and sagging branches, but none of them led anywhere. I kept ending up near the same crooked stump, half split down the middle like it had been struck by lightning. I sat there to catch my breath. That's when I heard it. My name, spoken softly from somewhere behind me. I stood up, turned. No one. Then again, louder. Name! I don't want to write it here. I don't know if it still belongs to me. The voice was mine. Not just the same pitch, it was my voice, speaking like it had swallowed my lungs. I shouted, "Where are you?" No answer. I walked toward the sound and found a clearing. In the center, a chair. Old, wooden, facing away from me. Someone sat in it. I circled slowly. It was me. Not breathing, not blinking, just sitting. And then the head turned, not fully, just enough. And the mouth, my mouth, whispered, "You'll be needed soon." Then the body sagged, collapsed like an empty coat, and the wind died, and the trees leaned closer. Something was wrong with the sky. I didn't notice it until I looked straight up,
Not at sunset, not through the trees, just up, standing in the middle of the road, neck craned, eyes open. The clouds didn't move. They breathed, slowly, pulsing in and out, like lungs stretched across the sky. And between the clouds, the color wasn't blue. It wasn't anything. It was absence, a thin layer of sky-colored paint brushed over a hollow. And behind it, something was watching. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean I saw it blink. Only once. But it was enough. A flash of something enormous, hidden just behind the shape of daylight, like a lid closing over an unseen eye. I stumbled back, heart hammering. A man walking his dog passed me, without slowing. I turned to him and asked, "Do you see it? Do you see the sky?" He didn't stop. He just muttered, "You're not supposed to look up," and kept walking. Back in the motel, I tried again. I pressed my face against the window and looked through the gap in the curtain. Still sky, still color, still clouds, but no depth, no stars, no moon, just a painted lid. Something's hiding above us, and the town makes sure we never look directly at it. I left town again, tried the road one more time, just to prove it to myself. Maybe something had changed. Maybe I'd done enough to unlock it. I packed my things, said nothing to anyone, got in my car, drove. The road seemed clearer this time, less winding, less dense. The trees opened wider. I turned the radio on, static, but underneath it, I heard something, a voice, my voice, repeating the same word over and over, settle. I turned it off, kept driving. After 20 minutes, I saw it, a billboard, faded, torn at the edges. It showed a version of the town, brighter than it really was. Blue skies, laughing people, dogs on leashes. A caption at the bottom, "Welcome to Evergreen. You'll never want to leave." But it was the back of the sign. I'd already passed it, which meant I slammed the brakes. I was driving in circles. I turned around, drove back the other way. 10 minutes later, I passed the sign again. Same direction, same side. I tried again. Each time it took a little longer to notice. By the 5th loop, I stopped being sure I'd started over at all. The trees began to blur together. The bends in the road didn't feel sharp anymore. Just soft, dreamlike. And that's when I saw him, standing at the curve, the man with no mouth. He raised one hand slowly, then pointed back toward town. I didn't argue. I turned the car around and followed his direction. But when I reached the edge of town again, something new was waiting for me. A sign, wooden, simple, just one word, carved deep. Resident. I started seeing myself around town, not just in mirrors, outside, in places I hadn't been, at times I couldn't explain. I walked past the post office and saw myself standing inside, sorting mail with practiced precision. Same face, same tired eyes, but different clothes. Clothes I didn't own. I looked into the cafe and saw myself behind the counter, pouring coffee for the man who used to read the newspaper. I walked by the house with the freckled girl on the porch and saw my face in the window upstairs, staring out, watching me. Sometimes they'd look directly at me. Sometimes they'd smile. Once I caught one waving. I ran back to the motel and locked the door. I paced the room, trying to remind myself who I was. I repeated my name out loud, my hometown, my age. But the name sounded thinner, like a word I was borrowing. I looked in the mirror. It smiled. I didn't. And from the other side, in just a slightly wrong voice, it said, "We're almost ready." I covered the mirror, turned off the lights, and sat in the dark, waiting for the reflection to forget me. But I knew it wouldn't, because now there were more of me than just one. Near the western edge of town, past the overgrown playground and the silent train tracks, I found something new. A garden. At first, I thought it was a cemetery, the way the ground rose in small rounded humps, the way the paths curved softly between them, not in straight lines, but lazy, thoughtful spirals. But there were no gravestones, only plaques, small, bronze, half covered in moss. Each bore a name. Just names. June, Miles, Avery, Leon, Nora, me. My name was there too. I dropped to my knees, brushed the dirt off the plaque. It wasn't carved, it was cast, set into the metal like it had always been there. Below the name was a date. Not birth, not death, just settled. And today's date. I looked around. The garden was huge, hundreds of names, thousands maybe, a forest of silence. And in the center, barely visible through the haze, was a single tree, wide, hollow, blackened at the roots. I didn't go near it. I couldn't. Even from a distance, it felt like that tree knew me. I noticed them just after visiting the garden. Statues. At first, I thought they were people frozen in thought, sitting on benches, standing near windows, leaning against fences. I thought maybe they were just still. But they never blinked, never breathed, never.
Deep and dark, changed clothes. Some were in mid-stride, others looked half-turned, as if someone had called their name and they were caught between replies. I got close to one, a man near the library steps. He had crow's feet, gray stubble, a soft jaw. His eyes were glassy, but not dead, just paused. There was a plaque at his feet, just like in the garden. Same name, same date, settled. They weren't statues, not really. They were people who had stopped moving, people the town no longer needed to keep walking. That night, I dreamed of being perfectly still, and the relief of it. No thoughts, no breath, just pause. And when I woke up, my muscles ached from not moving. I found the archivist in the library basement. There was no light, just the faint hum of a machine that never stopped spinning, like a reel or projector long out of film. I had to follow the sound down a spiral staircase that wasn't on any blueprint I'd seen. He was sitting at a desk
in the center of a circular room. No windows, no shelves, just stacks of paper, all handwritten, most yellowed with age. He didn't look up. "Which version of you are you now?" he asked. I didn't answer. He dipped a pen into an inkwell, began to write. He said, "Once the paper knows your name, the rest follows. The mouth, the eyes, the skin. It remembers." I asked what he meant. He handed me a page. On it, a sketch of my face. Not recent, future. Hair thinner, eyes faded, a soft, slack expression like the statues outside. "Is this what I become?" "No," he said. "It's what you've been." I tried to tear the paper. It wouldn't rip. Instead, the edges curled inward and the page vanished in my hands. It happened at dusk. No warning, no sound, just movement. They came from the museum. The door, the one that hadn't opened before, was now ajar, wide enough for something to slip through. And they did. Dozens of them. Tall, pale, no mouths, no eyes, but I knew what they were. Versions. Reflections that no longer needed mirrors. Cast-offs from those who had resisted too long. People that town couldn't quite digest, so it kept them as outlines. They moved in a slow procession down the main street, past the cafe, past the garden, not menacing, just deliberate, as if enacting a ritual. And behind them, the archivist, walking softly, carrying a candle that didn't flicker. He placed it on the steps of the museum, and then the bell rang. 4 chimes this time, the first time it ever changed. Everyone else closed their doors. I didn't. I watched, and when the last mouthless figure passed me, it paused, tilted its head, then mirrored my stance exactly. I raised my hand. So did it. But when I smiled, it didn't. It just stood there, waiting. The motel had a basement. I found it 2 days later, or maybe it found me. A loose board near the bathroom had come unfastened, revealing a latch. I followed a steep, narrow stairwell into the dark. No light, no railing, just cold stone and deeper cold below it. The air smelled like the library basement, but older, wetter. I found rooms, small ones, cell-like, each with a mirror on the far wall and a single item on the floor. A pair of shoes, a spoon, a photograph with the face scratched out. I walked past 5 of these, and then I heard breathing. Not mine. Something slow, calm. I stepped into the 6th room and saw myself, curled in the corner, hands over my face, rocking gently. He looked up and whispered, "If you stop looking for the way out, they'll let you sleep." Then he laid down and exhaled and didn't move again. There was a house that had been empty for as long as I'd been here. White paint, mostly peeled. One window cracked. Front porch slanted inward like it was always ready to collapse. Then one day, the door was open. No one had gone in, no one had come out, but the door was open, and above it, someone had painted a name. My name. I stepped inside. The walls were lined with pictures, all of me Every age, every angle, even ones I hadn't lived yet. A version of myself older than I am now, standing in places I'd never been. The furniture was exactly how I would have arranged it. The books were all ones I remembered loving, even ones I'd forgotten. There was a jacket hanging by the door, my jacket, one I had lost years ago. And on the table, a single note, handwritten. This place fits you. I sat down, and for a moment, I forgot I didn't belong here. The mirror was gone from my motel room, just an empty space now. But when I walked past the cafe window, I saw my reflection. It was walking the other direction, smiling, confident, at ease. It wasn't mimicking me anymore. It was living. I ran after it, turned the corner, nothing there. I searched all day, every window, every polished surface, until finally I found it in the playground mirror, a warped piece of metal on the back of the merry-go-round. It stared back at me. Then it spoke. "You're the last to leave you." And it walked away, and its shadow stayed behind, longer than mine. Room 3 is empty now. I checked again this morning. The door was open, curtains drawn, bed made. No bag, no jacket, no sign of the woman I saw arrive days ago. I asked the woman at the cafe if she remembered her. She stirred sugar into a cup and said, "What woman?" I asked again, described her, the car, her face. The woman behind the counter blinked, once, slowly, then said, "You're thinking of someone else." She placed a cup in front of me, my usual, except now the mug had no name on it. It had mine yesterday. I tried to protest, tried to say something wasn't right, but the words died in my throat, the way they always do when I get too close to the edge. And the reflection in the coffee? It smiled. Not mine. The streets aren't the same anymore. I walked for hours, but nothing is where it used to be. The post office has vanished. The clock shop now faces the wrong direction. The library is taller, not by much, but enough to notice. The cafe has no windows. The girl on the porch is gone. In her place, a chair, empty, rocking slowly. When I try to map the town in my head, the buildings shift like puzzle pieces that don't want to fit together, like they're being arranged for someone else's memory, not mine. And when I walk to the edge of town, the road is gone. Just trees now. Tall, silent, listening. I don't think the town wants me to leave anymore. I think it wants me to forget I ever wanted to. I found a piece of paper under my door. Just a name. Mine. Underneath it, form accepted.
Deep and dark. I held it in my hand, and it felt warm, alive, like it pulsed with a quiet heartbeat. I tried to rip it. It didn't tear. Instead, the ink bled into my fingers. I washed my hands 3 times. Still there. By nightfall, it had spread. Up my wrist, across my forearm. Tiny ink lines forming patterns I couldn't decipher. Words in a language I didn't remember learning. I looked in the mirror, and my face looked smoother, not younger, less detailed, like a sketch that had stopped being edited, like I was being simplified, flattened into something the town could file away. The bell rang again, 5 notes this time.
I wasn't ready for it. No one was. The townspeople stopped, froze where they stood. The statues blinked. The reflections in the windows turned to look outward, directly at me. The air thickened, the sky dimmed, and the museum, the one with no door, opened completely. I heard them first, the mouthless ones. But this time they were chanting, a low hum. No words, just intention. A wave of sound that reached into the bones. They marched down Main Street, and behind them came mirrors, carried like banners, hundreds of them, each one filled with faces, my face, 1,000 me's staring back, some smiling, some screaming. One raised its hand, the others followed, and I did too, because there was no one else left to mimic but myself. I returned to the garden, to the black tree at the center. It was taller now, wider. Its bark was split in the shape of a doorway, and inside, nothing. Not darkness. Nothing. I stepped closer and heard it breathing. No, not breathing, whispering. Whispering names. All the names I'd seen before, and mine, over and over, like it was trying to wear the name out until it became part of the roots. I touched the bark. It was soft, like skin. It opened. Inside, a chair and a mirror. I sat. The mirror flickered. And for the first time, I didn't see my face. I saw the town, alive, watching, smiling. I don't know how long I've been here now. The clocks don't tick anymore. The sun never quite rises. The air never fully changes. My reflection no longer waits for me. It moves freely. Sometimes I follow it. Sometimes it follows me. But we're not different anymore. Not really. The woman at the cafe calls me dear. The man watering the grass nods at me like an old friend. The dogs don't bark. They lie at my feet like they've always belonged to me. I tried to say my old name out loud this morning. Nothing came out. Not even breath. Just stillness. And I was fine. I woke this morning with something new on the motel nightstand. A key. Not to room 2, to room 1. The door opened easily. Inside, a desk and a pen and a mirror. On the wall above it, a sign, Archivist Needed. I sat down, picked up the pen, felt my hand move. Not mine anymore, just part of something larger. The ink flowed like memory. I began to write names. Not mine, not yet. But soon, because the town remembers. Because the town must. And someone always has to write the stories down. Even if no one leaves. Even if no one dies. Even if no one ever really arrives.